Hello everyone, welcome to or welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lena and I make college and book related content here on YouTube. And today I will be sharing with you all my August wrap up. Three books in the month of August, which, I mean, compared to last August, I think I read 10 books. So that's not really great. I'm just gonna blame it on the fact that I was working 2 different jobs and I was kind of burnt out from my summer semester at school. And I am glad that I actually ended up reading 3 books. And then in addition to that, the traveling, moving to France, etc. and etc. just cut down on my reading time, but I am excited to share with you all the books that I read in the month of August. So the first book that I read in the month of August was A Ceiling Made of Eggshells by Gail Carson Levine. The book is set during the Spanish Inquisition in Spain, specifically when they were working to expel all of the Jewish people from Spain. It follows the story of Loma, who is a young Jewish girl living in Spain with her large family, and she starts at a pretty young age at the beginning of the book, probably around 6 or 7, and by the end of the book she is in her upper teens. All Loma really wants to do in life is get married, have children. For young girls her age, this is typically around 13 or 14 when they would be betrothed and then married and start having kids. So that's all she really wants in her life. She sees it happening with her older sisters and older brothers, and that's what she's looking forward to. But her grandfather, Bello, decides that he wants her to be his little companion on all of his road trips across the country to the Spanish royalty, and so that becomes her new way of life, and she kind of has to put down her other aspirations to the side. About her journeys with her grandfather, she realizes just how dangerous it is for Jews to be living in Spain during this time, and she becomes much more aware of what exactly her grandfather is doing, as well as what the Spanish royalty and those who were working for the Inquisition are doing. So I initially picked up this book because it's by Gail Carson Levine. I loved Gail Carson Levine growing up. She was one of my favorite authors. Ella Enchanted was the first book I read by her, and I read many, many, many more of her other books, and I've loved most of them, if not all of them. So I just decided to pick this up. It was also a little odd because in July I had just finished another book about the Spanish Inquisition, but this was about the expulsion of Muslim people from Spain. So this was a really interesting, different perspective about the same time in history. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. For the first chunk of the book, honestly, tempted to give 2.5, but the end of the book kind of righted itself for me and made it more worth the read. It was definitely a mixed read. I really appreciated the historical context and all of the information about the Spanish Inquisition, Jewish people and their culture and their different way of life. I was really not a fan of Loma in the beginning. I found her a little annoying. But this book is written for a younger age group, so that could be part of it, and I just that voice did not appeal to me. But by the end of the book, I really, really liked her. I appreciated her as a character. I also appreciated Gail Carson Levine's choice to have Loma's aspirations be getting married and having children, and having there be absolutely nothing wrong with that being a worthwhile aspiration and something to go for, because it is, and everyone's different, and just because you want to have kids and get married, that there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's a narrative that's been pushed for a little bit, or a long time really. It is totally fine, and I appreciated that side of things. However, at the same time, Bello, the grandfather, was honestly the absolute worst human being, and I honestly think he's a little dangerous for young girls, specifically like 9, 10-year-olds. That's like the age group this book was written for. I think it's dangerous for them to be reading this book because I don't think Bello's behavior was actually ever fully addressed. He is really manipulative and controlling. He dominates Loma's life and doesn't really allow her to do anything she wants to do. And I just find that really hard to read when I'm imagining a 9-year-old girl reading this at the same time. He was one of the worst characters that I've read this summer, as in like evil bad guy kind of thing. He honestly put him right up there with Hansu and Pachinko. Those men, so controlling, domineering, manipulative, with really, I just lacked empathy for them. I could not see where they were coming from, and I wasn't even like I just couldn't tolerate them in the slightest. The other thing about this book that I struggled with is Gail Carson Levine writes in the beginning of the book that she is Jewish, and this is about her Jewish heritage and Jewish family, and maybe like what her family members may have gone through during this time. And I really appreciate that, but I just question some of the stereotypes that are perpetuated within this book, specifically the focus around money. I think that's a really harmful stereotype that is constantly brought up about Jewish people and the Jewish community. And I just wonder how it was handled in the reading and writing of this book. I'm not Jewish, so I can't really speak to that, but that is a question I have. So if you know anything about that, feel free to leave down in the comments below. But that was just something that I found a little questionable because I wasn't sure how it would read to a non-Jewish audience who maybe is already subscribing to those stereotypes. The second book that I read in the month of August was A Long Petal of the Sea by Isabel Allende. This book is set during the Spanish Civil War, so another Spanish book, but this is much later. General Franco and his fascists are working to overthrow the government, and when they succeed in doing so and take Spain by storm, many people are struggling to get out and escape from the deathly horrible dictatorship that Franco and his fascists are starting to put into place. There are two brothers, one of them who is fighting against Franco and his fascists, and the other one who is a young doctor. The brother, unfortunately, dies and leaves his pregnant girlfriend, Rosa, without a significant other and someone to protect her, and so his brother steps in as a replacement, sort of, kind of. Victor, the young doctor, and Rosa, the young pregnant woman, are able to get aboard the SS Winnipeg and go to Chile and start over their life there. Things are far from over there. There are much more issues that they have to face. And this is obviously a historical fiction novel, so there is a lot of historical information and historical context about the Spanish Civil War, Chile during this time, and what happened with communism and Latin America and the way that the United States was handling things, as well as other countries around the world. This was a really fascinating read. I've wanted to read Isabel Allende for a long time. This book specifically has been on my list for a long time. I'm not sure quite how it came onto my list, but it came onto my list a few months ago, and I'm excited I got to read it. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. Similarities between this book and The Lowland were really interesting to me, just because it was two brothers, one of them dies, and then the pregnant wife / girlfriend / significant other has to go with the other brother for like a marriage of convenience. It was weird that I read books like that basically back to back that had such similar storylines or premises, but then as far as the book actually played out, they were vastly different, and I honestly preferred the way that this book played out more than The Lowland. I really appreciated reading more about the Spanish Civil War, about Franco. I read Fountains of Silence by Ruta Septis, which is also about the Spanish Civil War, but that was more after the fact, during Franco's reign, and this was more leading up to and seeing what was happening. I love Victor, the young doctor. I thought he was so sweet and kind, and he really warmed my heart. I also appreciated Victor and Rosa's relationship so much more. I found it so realistic and so complicated, and yet it did not destroy me the way The Lowland did with the cheating and infidelity. I appreciated this so much more, and especially the end of this book. I really have found out that I love reading books from an older person perspective, and when they've gone through their whole life and are looking back on their life and really celebrating friendship and love and all that they've accomplished. It really is beautiful for me to read, and I was sobbing for a good last chunk of the book. My biggest complaint about the book was about the middle section, because it just kind of read like a recap. All of a sudden I was no longer engaged in the story. I didn't care as much, so I'm not really sure why that happened or how it happened, but it did. So that's my biggest complaint about the book. I'm not sure if that was me or the book, but yeah, I did really enjoy this book, and I want to pick up more of Isabel Allende's work in the future because I have heard she's written even better books. And the last book that I read in the month of August was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Yeah, I did it. So So for those of you who don't know, and for those of you who somehow have not stumbled across this series, this book is about Feyre, who is a young girl living on the outskirts of a village, and she accidentally kills one of the Fae, and as punishment she is kidnapped and taken to the essentially land of the Fae, and she has to serve out her punishment there. It is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. So you can probably guess kind of like what the majority of the first chunk of the book is about, and I'm not going to tell you about the rest because I don't want to give it away. So I read this book for a couple different reasons. The first my sisters make fun of me for, but I said research, like honestly this is why I do read books. It's why I read Twilight, why I read The Maze Runner, why I read The Hunger Games, why I read Divergent. It's just to like get more knowledge about these really popular books that everyone's talking about. I just read them so I know about them and I can talk about them and be more critical of them. I had been putting off reading this book for a long time because I read A Throne of Glass by Sarah J Maas, and I hated that book. And I read it in middle school. And then when it got insanely popular, I was like, oh, maybe it was just me, like, it was just my time, like, I should just, like, read it again. And I started it again, and it was even worse. So I put it to the side, and when Court of Thorns and Roses and the whole series became really popular, I didn't read it because I was like, I don't really like Sarah J Maas, but its popularity has not gone away. It has only really gotten bigger, so I just decided to give it a try because everyone said that this book was so much better than A Throne of Glass. And, you know, maybe, but like, was it better just because the sex was more graphic? That is my question, because I don't know that that's how I quantify better for me personally. Because first of all, Feyre, annoying. I could not stand her. Boo, personality. Does she have one? No, she doesn't. She's really just like, kind of boring. Tamlin, the growling and snarling had me cackling. Like, I could not handle it. It was so almost hysterical and like a parody to me. I just couldn't take it seriously. And I also just like didn't understand the relationship. Like I couldn't even buy into the relationship and let myself just be swept up into like the romance and the love of it all, just because like it was not good. I just could not. Also, like, is anyone gonna talk about the insane similarities between this book and An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson, I think is her name? Because I have questions about that. I mean, I know Enchantment of Ravens came out second or after the fact, but it's two young women who are living on the outskirts of town. They both love to paint. They both screw up with the Fae. They both get kidnapped to atone for their actions and then fall in love, and then the romance drives the entire story. Like, I haven't heard anyone talk about that, and that's really shocking to me because both are relatively popular books. That being said, probably will not finish the series. I don't foresee a reason why I would want to. I'm glad I read it. Now I know about it. Now I can talk about it. I just did not find Feyre as a character great to read from. Tamlin, annoying. There were none of other side characters that I know get introduced later on in the series as the main characters that I want to read from. So honestly, didn't love it. 2 out of 5 stars. So those are all the books that I read in the month of August. If you have any questions, book recommendations, video recommendations, please leave them down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and I will see you